Gift and Legacy, Advanced Directives, and the Ethical Will with Ali Petok. So Ali, take it away.
Thanks so much. So just to start, I'm going to ask everybody who's not muted to mute just so that there's not background noise, but there's going to be some interactive time later. So you should be able to unmute yourself later on. So thanks. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second. All right. Is that showing up okay for everybody? Thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. So hi, my name is Allie. For those of you who don't know me, and I'm a clinical social worker. I specialize in cancer and chronic illness, and I worked for many years in outpatient palliative oncology in the hospital setting. So I've done a lot of work around end of life care, planning in serious illness, and this, if I was asked what's something that you could talk about for 40 minutes without much preparation, this would probably be the topic. So I am going to be talking today about advanced directives as well as ethical wills, which are unique and they're used more universally now, but historically are part of the Jewish tradition. So just to start, I wanted to share this quote from Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal, which if you haven't read it, I really recommend. So towards the end of the book, he says, "We've been wrong about what our job is in medicine. We think our job is to ensure health and survival, but really it is larger than that. It is to enable well-being. And well-being is about the reasons one wishes to be alive. Those reasons matter not just at the end of life or when debility comes, but all along the way. Whenever serious sickness or injury strikes and your body or mind breaks down, the vital questions are the same. What is your understanding of the situation and its potential outcomes? What are your fears and your hopes? What are the trade-offs you are willing to make and not willing to make? And what is the course of action that best serves this understanding?" So that's actually pretty much a summary of the whole talk. So you got it in the first slide. But he does a great job, and it's a beautiful book, kind of exploring some of the existential questions about care planning. But there's an organization called the Conversation Project, which was actually started locally in Newton. And from their research, they have found that 92% of Americans say it's important to discuss their wishes for end of life care. So, nearly universally feeling that it's important, but only 32% have had such a conversation. 95% of Americans say they would be willing to talk about their wishes, and 53% say they'd even feel relieved to discuss it. And even being somebody who works in this field, I have a lot of people in my life who feel that it is morbid, maybe, to talk about this, which ironically, it is morbid because we're talking about dying. And yet, that's something that we're all going to face. So it's a really important conversation to have. And I'm going to take time for questions at the end, but I do just want to say that if people have questions, you can put them in the chat. And Arena is here to help with that. And I can also just take them there at the end if you feel like you're going to forget something along the way. So what are advanced directives? And I'm curious, just if raise of hands, how many people have an advanced directive in place? Okay. So an advance directive is a care plan for your wishes in the case of serious illness, which includes naming a healthcare proxy, so somebody who could advocate for you and make decisions about your care if you're unable to do so yourself. That's the first part of an advance directive. And the second part is a living will. So that states the type of treatments that you do or do not want at the end of life. And just to clarify, this is separate from a DNR or a do not resuscitate order. So you can include a DNR in an advance directive, but to really have it honored, it has to be a separate document. I was just talking about this with some family members yesterday that if somebody was in a situation where, for example, 911 was called, that um, there's a unless somebody hands them a DNR, you're wearing a bracelet that says do not resuscitate. There's an imperative to start action like CPR if that's indicated. So I did want to make note because this was new information to me, but in Massachusetts, it's one of 3 states where a living will isn't legally binding. Doesn't mean that you can't have one or that it's not helpful. It just means it's not a legal document the same way that it is in other states. It's still something that you can give to your doctors, and um, any great care team is going to want to talk to you about what your wishes are and honor your wishes, whether or not they're written down. Like, my hope is that if wishes are being talked about with the care team, that they're taking note of it and putting it in their documentation in their notes anyway, so that they can honor those wishes. Um, it does have to be signed by 2 witnesses that are not your healthcare proxy. It does not need to be notarized. Um, and any hospital, if you ever were going in, even for a routine surgery, and honestly, anytime that you go into your primary care provider, should be asking if you have an advance directive, and if not, offering one. And if you're being seen in a practice that uses Epic, so if they use something called My Chart, and you're able to access your online portal and kind of go through, here's my health history, here's where it says my medications, there is very, very likely a tab that says advanced care planning, and you can actually fill it out yourself from home, um, and probably put in the name of a healthcare proxy and an alternative healthcare proxy if the first person is unavailable, and probably answer a few questions about your wishes. So if you're on a system like Epic, My Chart, you should be able to find that. Um, I also just made note of something called 5 wishes, sometimes known as aging with dignity. And 5 wishes, I have it right here somewhere. I should have it right here, but of course it's not right next to me. Um, Here it is. It's right next to me, in fact. 5 wishes is a really it is an advanced directive document. It looks like this. I'm going to have resources at the end of my talk, so that's one that I have. Um, and I really like this document. They have a physical version that you can order, but they also have an online version that you can do and save to your files. But what I really like about this is that it uses very gentle language that's easy to process and easy to understand. And it talks about personal, spiritual, emotional concerns instead of just the healthcare piece of things. So the 5 wishes it has are: the person I want to make care decisions for me when I can't, the kind of medical treatment I do or don't want. So those are the first 2 pieces: how comfortable I want to be, how I want people to treat me, and what I want my loved ones to know. Um, so I just wanted to share that. So, what is a healthcare proxy? So, as I said, a healthcare proxy is somebody who would make decisions for you if you are unable to do so yourself. They're somebody that would only be utilized if you are deemed incapacitated and incompetent by your doctor to make decisions on your own. So I think that there's a lot of stress around choosing somebody because there's kind of an idea of this being done on the fly. But in reality, there are really only specific situations where a healthcare proxy would be utilized. More importantly, there's somebody who really needs to understand your values, your decisions, and your beliefs around life, end of life and healthcare preferences. Um, and that part's really important. And sometimes having family conversations allows people to understand maybe the person I thought I wanted to be my proxy doesn't share the same values as me. And that's okay. That's allowed, but it's important to know because they might not be the right person to choose. Um, and there doesn't have to be uh, shame or offense around that. Just it's important to acknowledge. So I shared with somebody yesterday, like I made a joke that um, it might put a lot of pressure on my spouse to make a decision about life support and if life support had to be removed. But my brother wouldn't have a problem with it at all. So he would be a great proxy because if I said that that's what I wanted, he would be able to honor it, no problem. So when considering a healthcare proxy, it's really important to think about end of life values. So one thing I talk about with a lot of my clients who have some sort of terminal illness is quantity versus quality of life. So if we think of it kind of like an axis, um, most people kind of fall somewhere in the middle when they're dealing with serious illness, but a lot of people find themselves at one point where they will do whatever to have as much quantity as possible. And of course, I see this with younger people who have young kids, for example, and wanting to be around for as long as possible, um, versus somebody who might feel like the treatment I'm being offered makes my quality of life really miserable and really not tolerable. And kind of if the doctor says I could have this much more time, but I'm going to feel this way, I might not want to choose that. Um, and so thinking about that, which is not set in stone, but very likely a moving target for a while, is really important when considering creating this document. Other things to think about are a desire to be at home versus a hospital versus a healthcare setting. So if I am dealing with a long-term illness, do I want to be at home if I end up being in a place of utilizing something like hospice and end-of-life care? Or would I prefer to be in an inpatient hospice? Or do I feel really safe in a hospital? Or do hospitals really bother me because there's so much noise? Um, and kind of taking all of those things into account, or a healthcare setting like a long-term care facility or assisted living. Thinking about religious or spiritual values that might impact your care, um, which are different, obviously, for people of different religious backgrounds. Um, Desirable or undesirable life support treatments. So one example I think about a lot is a ventilator, and the idea of uh, some people feel like I would never want to be on a ventilator, but because I don't recommend using the word never or always because we can't predict the future. Um, if, for example, somebody had a condition like a pneumonia that was they were likely to recover from, but it got bad enough to be on a ventilator, but we expect them to be able to come off of the ventilator in 2 to 3 days, um, would that be a case that you might be open to that? And is that kind of a general value topic situation that you've talked about with your person? Um, Thinking about if there's a clergy person, family, friends that you would want to be present with you, or if you were at the end of life, or is that a time that you feel like you would want to be alone or only be with maybe a medical team? Is there music that you love that you might want quietly playing? Would you want it to be silent? Would you want to be near nature and be able to have windows open? And generally, the big question is what makes life worth living? That is also not set in stone because our bodies and our minds change over time. So for somebody who's 30, maybe running 20 miles a day makes life worth living. Not totally sure how I feel about that, but maybe when you're 70, you can't run anymore. Something has changed, but there's something else that makes life worth living for you. So choosing the ideal healthcare proxy, somebody who has an understanding of your health conditions and the symptoms of your health conditions. And if you're taking any medications to treat them, what the side effects are and how they make you feel. Somebody who has really good attention to detail. So, like if there's a lawyer in your family, maybe they're a good person to choose. Maybe not, and we won't hold that against them. But somebody who has good attention to detail and kind of keep track of a lot of the facts. Somebody who actually understands the responsibility of the position and feels that they can live up to that responsibility, meaning if there comes a time where they're needed, that they're able to come be where you are and be around as long as is needed. Somebody who has really solid communication skills. You want them to be able to talk openly with a medical team and with other people in the family and with you when you have these conversations. Somebody that you trust. So you know that if you've talked to them and said, these are my values, here's what's important, that you really trust that they're going to honor that and that they're going to advocate on your behalf because things don't always go, they almost never go the way that we predict them. So is this person going to advocate for you? And it's really important to note it doesn't have to be your spouse. Um, there are times when it's really, really hard for the person that we love the most to make really difficult decisions about our lives and our healthcare. And sometimes that's too hard for them. And so, why I called this part of this talk gift is that it's actually a gift to your loved ones to create these kind of documents because you're able to let the people in your life know what your wishes are and what your values are so that they're not put in the position of having to guess. And when people have to guess, that can end with a lot of feelings of guilt or stress on top of an already stressful situation. Um, and so thinking about is the person that might be automatically the one I would think of the right person? Often they are, but sometimes it's too much stress, too hard. So if you don't choose a proxy, this is also a little bit different state by state. And so you would want to check in with your own state laws, but essentially there's an order that a hospital would use to kind of call to make decisions. So the legal guardian appointed by a judge is only in rare situations. So typically the order of who a proxy would be in terms of next of kin would be spouse, adult children, adult grandchildren, parents, siblings and half siblings, and then extended family or family friends. Okay, so the hard part is how to talk about this stuff. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff. I know plenty of people who do what I do, or clergy people, or doctors, or people who kind of face these scenarios a lot who don't have advanced directives because they don't want to talk about it. So there happens to be this thing called National Healthcare Decision Day that's every year on April 16th. It was actually, the date was inspired by the famous quote by Benjamin Franklin, in this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes. Because we do our taxes every year, so why not think about end of life care every year around the same time, just to make those few days a little bit more painful, but make sure that we get it done. But in reality, it doesn't have to be something that you revisit every year, depending on what phase of life you're in or if you have a serious illness diagnosis or not. But a living document that should be revisited at a minimum every 5 to 10 years. And definitely revisited if you're diagnosed with a serious illness or if you have any major life event like marriage, divorce, a death in the family, or having a child. especially marriage or divorce, because those things are going to change the automatic list of who is your proxy. Um, I'll also add that for my friends who are in partnerships that aren't legal marriage, but their partner is the person who they would want to make a decision for them, it's really, really important to have this document. Because if you're not legally married and your person is not named, then they're not going to be the person chosen by the medical community. And we really want to honor your relationship and what's most important to you. I just learned of International What Matters to You Day, which happens to be tomorrow. So, June 3rd, 2025, there's a website, International What Matters to You Day. I literally learned about this yesterday. So, um, this is more, it's a day to have a conversation about values. But it's a really uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people, like I said. So I would think of it as kind of an ongoing conversation that we can be patient with people in our lives and notice if it's making them uncomfortable, that's making them uncomfortable. It's hard for them. And so they're not angry at you or unwilling to have the conversation. Maybe it just has to happen bit by bit with time. So I mentioned the conversation project, and I'm a really big proponent of thinking about values and how um, thinking about what our values are, whether we're living aligned with our values or they're more aspirational, um, that identifying our personal values is a really great way to make many decisions in life and also kind of guide many conversations in life. So this is just taken directly from the conversation project, but um, this is a way to define values. So three main questions. The first is, what does a good day look like for you? So that might be time with family and friends. It might be playing golf or going to the beach. It might be like sitting at your kitchen table and watching the birds at the bird feeder. The second is, what or who supports you during difficult times? Who is your support network? Who gives you strength? Could be your congregation, your family, could be your pets, your friends, your people from your cultural background. And then what matters to me through the end of my life? It might be being independent. It might be being able to spend time with people that I love. It might be being able to read a book. Might be having a cup of coffee. Uh, Having a cup of coffee is always my example of kind of that like very basic thing that can bring us joy if you're a coffee drinker. When we hold a warm cup of coffee in our hands and we smell it, and all of the kind of senses that we can experience in that one little daily act, which is actually kind of a miracle when we tap into all of our senses and how much joy and grounding that can bring us. And that might be the thing that matters to you. And I respect it if it is. Um, I'm going to take a pause here before turning to ethical wills. Just if anybody has anything that they want to share, if like any of these questions are um, striking to you when thinking about values, does something come to the top of your mind, like when these questions are presented to you that you think, oh yeah, this is what it is. And feel free to unmute yourself and call out, and no need to if you don't want to. Right. Well, we are going to do an interactive portion at the end, so I will ask you some questions then. Okay. So who, before signing up for this session today, who was familiar with the term ethical will? Okay. So the Hebrew word is sava'ah. It can mean instruction. For example, the instructions and the guidelines taught by the Baal Shem Tov about how to practice Judaism. I think the term Sava might be found biblically referring to military instructions. But an ethical will is a Jewish concept historically, drawn from Genesis 49. So when Jacob blesses his children, can I get a volunteer reader? Is that too much to ask? I can't see everybody. So Irina, if somehow somebody is volunteering, let me know. Oh, great. Okay, Leah, that would be great.
All
Are you
these
able
for
to
the oh,
go
all
ahead?
these for the tribes of Israel, 12 in number. And this is what their father said to them as he bade them farewell, addressing to each a parting word appropriate to him. Then he instructed them, saying to them, I am about to be gathered to my kin. Bury me with my ancestors in the cave which is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, the cave which is in the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre in the land of Canaan, the field that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite for a burial site. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave in it, bought from the Hittites. When Jacob finished his instructions to his sons, he drew his feet into the bed, and breathing his last, he was gathered to his kin.
Thank you. So this is the first example of an ethical will. And if you read the whole chapter, Jacob actually goes through son by son and tells him what his future holds or what his blessings are, or in some cases, a bit of a rebuke of what, he is doing wrong. But he goes through and speaks to each son individually. He blesses them. He tells them where he wants to be buried. And so this is the first example of an ethical will where we see somebody conveying their wishes to the next generation and also including their legacy, their hopes, their values, their blessings. And like I said, sometimes a little bit of a rebuke. So the ethical will, see somebody in the chat, sorry. Oh, somebody asked, if a person has no children, is there a reason to write an ethical will? Which is a great question. And I would say yes, because it doesn't have to be just for your children. It can be for your community. It can be thought of as telling the world, this is who I was, and this is what's important, and what was meaningful to me. So the literary form of the ethical will, like what we just saw, and another example that I'll share, is often teachings of a father who is dying and has gathered his sons around his bedside. That's a lot of what we see historically. So, which really, to your question, it doesn't leave a lot of space for elaboration or explanations. So they're very practical in character historically, but there's a lot of modern takes on the ethical will, which I'll talk about. And the idea is really focusing on moral inheritance, our hopes for future generations, whether it's our own children or something like the Jewish people or, the people of Boston, or, that those kids that live down the street. They really rose in popularity during medieval times. And if you do a historical look back, they're reflective of controversies or trends in Judaism. So imagine a bunch of Jewish leaders or rabbis arguing about, when you should study or where you should study or what time you should say this prayer. And so you'll find some ethical wills where there are fathers telling their sons, you have to follow this guy, like he was doing it right, or you need to do it this way. Um, in modern times, they're used much more universally, not just by Jewish people. So of course we see different things now. Um, they share religious traditions, blessings. They're an opportunity for people to learn about oneself and to clarify life's meaning to them. Uh, Here we go. So this is actually another pretty famous ethical will from medieval times. Sephardi Jewish physician Judah Ibn Tibbon, who was a physician and a scholar, wrote his ethical will to his son. It was over 50 pages long. But the most famous lines are here in this little section where he said, "Avoid bad society, make thy books thy companions. Let thy bookcases and shelves be thy gardens and pleasure grounds. Pluck the fruit that grows therein, gather the roses, the spices, and the myrrh. If thy soul be satiate and weary, change from garden to garden, from furrow to furrow, from site to site. Then will thy desire renew itself and thy soul be satisfied with delight." So the most famous part of his ethical will was about the importance of reading and learning and the joy that can be found in that. So modern ethical wills can take many different forms, which is really cool. We have so many different tools that we can use today. We don't have to just write letters, but writing letters to our loved ones is, of course, still a really common way to do this. And when I say writing letters, it doesn't mean kind of at the end of life writing a letter, but a lot of people have a notes app in their phone, or they have journals that they keep and they write letters over time. And then it's something that can be shared because we have different values and thoughts and revelations at different points in our lives. So they could be journals, they can be audio or video recordings, which is deeply meaningful because when we can capture somebody's voice and their emotion or see their face and the emotion there, it's a really beautiful way to share these messages. They can be done in poetry or scrapbooks. They can be recipe collections or artwork or a slideshow, PowerPoint. So I never thought of it this way when it was happening, but when I was in high school, I actually went to visit my grandparents in Florida for a week, and there were things that each of them wanted to pass down to me and share with me so that I could carry them on. So my grandfather was a Torah scholar, and I knew trope. I knew how to chant and read Torah. So we read Torah together at Shabbat when I was there. But it was really important to him that he sit down and explain to me the parsha that we were reading and why it was important to really study it and understand it. And my grandmother taught me how to make matzo ball soup, and I still make matzo ball soup every year for Passover. And I can see my mom beaming. And there were a few other recipes that my grandma taught me, but that was kind of the big family recipe. And so, again, I don't know if they thought of it that way, but in many ways, that was their ethical will. It was really important to them to pass those things down to our family and to make sure that people knew that that was really important to them. It wasn't just something that they did. And so I'm grateful for that time. Another thing that makes an ethical will unique and very different than some other types of planning are that they can be shared while still alive. They can be created together as a family. So this idea about making a video or an audio recording, you can sit with your loved one and ask them questions and have conversations together, and you could record it. Or it could just be an experience that you have together that you remember. They're, of course, not legally binding. They're really just guidance. They're really ways of saying, I want to be remembered, and this is how. And it's an ancient tradition. So it's not just about kind of passing along financial or other inheritance. It's much bigger than that. Okay, I'm going to share a few minutes of this. It's pretty famous lecture. There was a lecture series at Carnegie Mellon called Last Lecture, and Randy Posh, his last lecture was then published into a book. But this is an example of an ethical will. So I'm just going to share a few minutes of this because it's really lovely and it's about an hour long. I definitely encourage you to look it up and give it a watch.
Oh, looks like there's a problem with the sound.
Yeah. Oh no.
Let's see. Um,
This is no good without the sound.
Don't hear it. Yeah.
okay. I guess since you're sharing, it must be in your settings. I don't
Oh,
think because I've
I
got
don't know if
audio.
it's because I'm wearing my headphones or not.
Oh, that might be it. Yeah. Wait, you are wearing? Okay.
Okay, let's see. Let me know if you can hear this. Can you hear it now?
Um,
No. No.
no.
Okay. So
You, oh,
Do you
you probably need to unshare for a moment and then share with sound optimized for video. So those are like settings you
oh,
need to click on it.
okay, let's see. Um, this might be out of my abilities right now.
do you want to try? Did you share this one with me? I could, if it's in the slideshow you sent me, I could.
Oh, I have tech support. Hold on one second.
Okay. Sources.
Oh, no. Okay, I didn't know how to do that. And optimize for video sharing. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay, here we go. Now is it working?
No.
No.
No. Okay.
I can skip this because I don't have a ton of time left. So, but it is really great and I really do recommend
Can you drop
looking it
the link?
up.
Can you put the link in
Yes,
the chat?
yes, that I can do. I
Perfect. And we can watch it on our own. That's good.
think I can do it. This I can do. I really can do. Back to chat, to everyone. Okay, bookmark that for later. Okay. All right. It is a very beautiful lecture. And if you couldn't tell, even without hearing, he has a terminal cancer diagnosis. And the lecture series the name had just been changed. But it used to be called the Last Lecture Series. And it was, if you were dying and you could give one last lecture and it would be about anything, what would it be? And he happened to be in that literal position and gave this really beautiful lecture. Oh, it really wants me to play this and I can't play it. Okay. So I do a lot of grief work in my job. I love talking about grief to anybody who will listen. I gave a talk about it a few years ago here, actually. So it just shows up all the time. So if you ever meet me and you tell me 5 things about yourself, I'll tell you 3 of them are grief. So ethical wills are actually a great tool in grief. We don't always know that we're going to lose somebody. And so there are ways that we can kind of reflect it back to somebody. So first, in anticipatory grief, if somebody is very sick and we know that we're losing them, we can have these conversations and ask them about, what do they want us to carry on for them? What did they mean to us? And then in the situation of an unexpected death, it's a beautiful tool to use in somebody's grief. A way to think about what somebody leaves behind that's not tangible. That's really just something that we carry with us. It honors continued bonds, which is a concept in the grief literature. The idea that grief isn't finite, it's not something that just ends and we move on from, but that we actually continue to honor our bonds with people that we've lost. So some examples are, are people able to mute? I'm hearing like multiple. Thanks.
Okay.
Oh, is it me somehow? Is
No,
it
no, I
my
got it.
guy?
I got
Oh,
it.
thank you. I'm sorry. So anyway, so some examples are thinking about, my first memory with this person was, or this person taught me something. I happened to go to the unveiling for my uncle yesterday, who passed away last year. And we were able to, a bunch of us were able to share, who he was and what made him him and how we remembered him. And so that's a tool in how we're grieving. And so I did want to take the last few minutes to just do something a little bit interactive. And there's Rabbi Jody Gordon, who's at the Berkshire, the Haver of the Berkshires, has done these workshops with her congregants about creating an ethical will. And so I adapted this from some of her work. And she kind of uses different categories of how to create an ethical will. And so this is from the idea of family memories. So I put 3 questions together that kind of give you an opportunity to think about creating an ethical will in 3 different ways, through writing, through art, and through tangible historical objects. So the first prompt is: great companies possess a statement or value of values or mission. What is yours? Craft a family mission statement, or it could be craft a mission statement for yourself. The second, if you had a family crest or insignia, what would it look like? What symbols or imagery would it include? What colors would you use? What medium? And then the last is about family heirlooms. So look around your house. Do you have an object that was passed down to you that reflects the legacy of your family? Write down the story for your children or grandchildren. And we don't have a ton of time. So I'll ask again, just thinking about those prompts, and I think the slides will be shared with everybody afterwards, but thinking about those prompts, does anything come to mind to anybody? Any imagery or objects? Mom, can you unmute? Do you want to share?
I do, because this one involves you. My parents were celebrating, I think, their 60th anniversary, and we were trying to think of something that was not a candle or not a flower or something like that, but something meaningful. And I think Allison was describing before that my dad was a Torah scholar, my mother was a terrific cook. And Allison said, we should do something, make something that is symbolic of that. So she came up with an idea of making what we called a ladle yad, which is it's a long, narrow tube. On one end is a yad, and on the other end is a ladle.
Right.
One piece of work, and it included sort of what we did with our family. Food was important, study was important, and that was a way of showing that. So
Yeah.
good job.
And I won't take credit. My mom has a cousin who's a welder, and that was actually totally his idea, and he created the object, but it was a really beautiful, it was like a piece of artwork in their home, and it did encapsulate who they were. It was really beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, just because
Oh,
we
I had
only have a
some,
few minutes. Oh,
could
yeah,
I share
please.
just quick thing? So,
Please.
so I have a beautiful tzedakah box that I gave to my father and stepmother when they got married. And after they both passed away, I now have the tzedakah box. So that's really special. And I also have used the menorah that my parents bought in Israel, and they're both gone now. So after my father's passing, I took that menorah, and my grandkids always say, like, oh my God, it's so big. It's so big and so heavy. And I say, well, that was Papa Ray's menorah. So it's those family heirlooms are just so special.
And I love that tzedakah has like dual meaning because it's teaching the value.
Right.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So I'm just going to end with this, and why I think an ethical will is beautiful and also important. There's a famous book that's often referenced in palliative care by Dr. Ira Byock, The Four Things That Matter Most. So these are the four things that matter most to share with the people in your life before you die. They are, please forgive me, I forgive you, thank you, and I love you. That's it. And it's a way to resolve interpersonal conflicts, kind of address any family history with integrity and with grace. But it really encapsulates what's the most important at the end in many ways, in many very simple ways. And so I think that it can also be guidance when thinking about creating an ethical will. So I just wanted to end with that. And I just shared here, thank you. I just shared here, this is kind of my little version of an ethical will in 3 photos. On the left, you see the bird. I'm wearing the bird here. I'm wearing my ethical will. So I have the bird. My dad's dad was a cartoonist, and the Crunch Bird was his most famous piece and very important in our family. And I have his artwork all over my house, and my kids, know who their papa was, and that he was an artist. And thanks. And then the other two photos, I'm a baker. I'm wearing my other piece of my ethical well, culinary goddess. Baking is really important to me. I bake challah every week. The challah on the bottom is in the shape of a uterus. I did a fundraiser for reproductive justice, which is also very important to me. And my kids say that I make the best challah in the world, and they are biased, but I also think I make pretty good challah. So that's something that I pass on to them and that they know is part of who I am and part of who we are. So yeah, so I have some resources at the very end here, and we should be able to share thanks the slides. But I'm happy to take any questions in the last few minutes if anybody has any. And it's okay if not, and you can email me too.
So Allison,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to say this was so interesting, informative. My husband and I just went to the lawyer and, did our advance directive and all of that. But I said to my husband, the Jewish concept, this more intimate talk about ethical will, we didn't discuss that with our lawyer. It was, we signed the forms, we put which kid is in charge of which, and, it was notarized. And so it was a little bit more, sort of methodical. And we did it like last week because we live in Maine now for 6 months and we're out of our New Jersey house. But this raises a lot more questions and more conversation, which I look forward to having with, our kids. On Zoom, we can, because we're not near them now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
and you can record on Zoom, you can record.
Yes. Yes. So I will probably be emailing you because I'll probably have a few questions along the way. So thank you.
Please do. Thank you for being here. Thank you. I'm reading your comments. Thank you. And one of the resources I shared actually is pretty cool. It's called StoryCorps. And there are a bunch of apps like this, but it's a way to record stories. And I want to say that it's a project of NPR, but I might be wrong. So fact, it is. Okay, I'm getting a nod that it is. So it's used for different things all over the country, but it's also something that we can, as individuals, access and record our stories. Well, thank you, everybody, so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Ali. That was a really wonderful session. And I just wanted to let everyone know the next thing in this room at noon is Freedom, Even in This Most Trying of Times with Rabbi Ora Weiss. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Thanks, Irina.